me just double check that it's running. I think Facebook delay is like delayed by like 10 seconds. Okay, yeah, we're live. Cool. Nice one. Hello, Facebook. Hello, YouTube. I think we should be on YouTube as well. Let me just double check. I feel like a dinosaur right now. This is like the first time I've actually done this, which is embarrassing. I should have done this a long time ago. I used to do Facebook Live, just Facebook Live, and with my phone, like two years ago now. And,
oh, really?
Yeah, it was really good actually. I used to do it on our Facebook group as well, and
ahead of the times.
I don't know about that, but it was like a Q&A sort of style where I would just literally let people ask questions and then answer them. It was good. It was actually very valuable, I think. I'm just checking that the YouTube stream is live right now. Yeah, we're live on YouTube. Awesome. Nice one. Okay, well, hello. If there are any listeners, there's a couple of people watching. Great. Hey, this is Stefan. You can see. Well, let me get right. This is Stefan Pretty. I've got Lee Malcher with me as well. You might be familiar with myself because of Subly, but you won't be familiar with Lee. So today is the first Subscription Rockstars live show, I guess, which is part of the Subscription Rockstars podcast, which we also have. And this was kind of a bit of a last minute idea, really, wasn't it, Lee?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? I've been really wanting to do like live shows for actually not for that long, but long enough to be like, okay, this makes sense. This is the right time to do this. So basically, Lee, I've known Lee for a very, very long time. And just before we start, by the way, the format of this is going to be quite casual. Hey, by the way, Lee, just so you know, there's comments. You'll be able to see them coming in as well. Hey, person. So the problem is because of the Facebook group, the way that we posted it, we can't see the people's names. In the description, there's a link. Whoever said, hey, go through and authorize your Facebook profile, and we'll be able to see who it is. But hey back. So the format for this will be quite casual. I mean, I've got a whiskey here, so, and excuse the glass. There you go. Yeah, I've actually got, what was that, Ben? What was that?
Ben Bracken.
Ben Bracken. I've got a wee Palveni here. This is actually a moving in gift from my stepdad. So
I think this was a like a raffle winning.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so.
I've not got a proper glass, and I am shamefully using ice, but I was so pleased with these spherical ice cubes that I had to.
And you're drinking Scotch whiskey in one of those types of glasses.
Just for the first one. That's when you find out I actually am Scottish, because it'll be the third and the fourth and the fifth. But drinking's not good for you kids. I hope I've got the set to the over 18 setting. So as I was saying, the format for this is going to be very casual. Ergo the drinks. And obviously part of this has been inspired by the Corona situation. I mean, this is the home Subly studio. At least we've got lightning bolt here. But yeah, I guess, so Lee's going to be a co-host on these shows. And we're basically going to bring in other experts in the e-commerce field to join in and give, just talk shop. Basically, originally we were actually thinking about names for this, and we realized, well, Subly's already got the Subscription Rockstars podcast. We might as well leverage that and use that as the brand. But we actually discussed this, and we were like, why don't we call it? What was it? Trenches.
We went through a few. The state of e-commerce, or the states of e-commerce. You say, I think I came up with e-commerce and enlightenment.
That's right.
What were the others? I don't know.
I think there was in the trenches. We came up with a couple of variations of that one actually.
Yeah. I mean, and that's just so everyone knows, that's how this situation started. Is Stefan and I, we call each other probably once or twice a month, and it's literally a case of sharing stories about being in the trenches. Working day to day. I'm lucky. I've got a really good balance of working with some, really established brands, 7 to 8 figure brands. But the really curious thing is I'm addicted to working in the trenches. And what I mean by that is I'm addicted to startups. I'm addicted to getting something off the ground and building it from nothing. And the reason I'm addicted to that is, quite honestly, is, when there's something, when there's something big on the line and you're trying desperately to build a business, your learning is just exponential. And, with more established brands, you can often get comfortable. And I find, I work best is when, shit is hitting the fan and you've got deadlines to meet and you have to build a business, you have to get customers. And that's where all the learning comes from. So that can then apply to the bigger brands. And it's amazing. I work with some really great brands and I'm very fortunate in that sense, but I have conversations with well-known brands, and the conversation obviously goes to, e-commerce and, paid advertising and social media. And I'm always astounded at how many of the basic things that they are not putting in place. So you ask yourself, why is that? It's, first of all, when you build a bigger business, it gets harder to manage and steer, but secondly, complacency creeps in. And that ultimately, I think, is why we started this podcast series, is so that we can take those learnings and, the Subscription Rockstars, correct me if I'm wrong, but the majority of them, will be in the trenches. A lot of them are new subscription businesses. A lot of them are medium-sized businesses. And, the ones that are huge, ignore everything I say because you're probably more of an expert. But
don't ignore completely. Definitely tune in.
I mean, where I'm here, quite honestly, is to share my experiences, tell some stories, and if you can learn from them, great. If not, no problem. But hopefully we've had some fun along the way.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of actually kind of giving the basis for the show, because talking about the idea of the names or the name In the Trenches and how that actually spawned into this idea for doing the show. So I think it's completely relevant. And actually, why don't we back up a second and actually tell people how we met? Because I think there's a lot in that story as well that led to that. Because you were talking about being in the trenches, you're talking about being addicted to startups, you're talking about the accelerated learning phase, or the benefit of that to be able to then apply it to bigger businesses or more budget robust campaigns, for example. Let's talk about the story, because I think we do have a good story. So
we were very fortunate. That's just reminded me that we should probably call out that one guy that introduced us,
Ashish.
Yeah. So
I still talk to him. He's a really good guy.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, how many years later? 10 years later now. And many of projects worked on together, and many stories told. But yeah, we basically met back in the UK as young, I guess, aspiring entrepreneurs, right? And in a place that, for those of you that aren't familiar, Scotland is a very tough place. The people, salt of the earth people, one of my favorite people in the world, but it's a really tough place to try and make it. And it's hard to find like-minded people. I was English, so it didn't help me going into a new city, trying to make friends with like-minded people. And, I think Stefan and I were fortunate to be introduced by a mutual friend. And I think if my memory serves me, I can't remember why we met. Maybe it was actually in a formal setting. And within 30 minutes, I think we were in a bar having a few beers and talking about our ambitions for the future, right?
Yeah, it went from a Costa coffee,
that was right.
And in that meeting, I think we realized we both were on the same level in life, and especially in career, and we just gelled in a friendship way very quickly. And then basically it was like, all right, let's go to the bar.
And and I've just remembered, I feel like we skipped a lot of small talk and catching we went straight to it. And I think, do you remember what both got us excited and onto our first project together? Probably within like 35 minutes.
Go on.
It was we started talking about The Apprentice.
Oh, no way.
We were talking about how we both always, we were pretty much always right about
so we thought
about who was going to get fired. And I think we talked about developing an app that was like dual screen watching. So this was 10
I remember
years.
the name of it.
What was it? The Apprentice. Oh, can we say that?
Yeah, we can. You've already said shit.
It was called the Apprentice, wasn't it?
Yeah, Apprentice.
And I think the idea was pretty much that while you're watching Apprentice, you can vote basically as to in real time who you think is going to get fired at the end of the show. And obviously during the show it changes because people do silly things and make an ass out of themselves. So that was our first project together.
We did do it.
Yeah, we did do it. Yeah.
I didn't know anything about iPhone development, but I think I used something called PhoneGap or something like that to code up a website and then did all the data stuff in the end. And it did work. It was terrible, but it worked. And published it on the App Store and then got it removed almost immediately. Oh no, it didn't even get. It did get approved and then it got removed. I think. I think because I remember a couple of my mates, we put it on for £1. We put it on for £1. Must have made like £5. And then I'm pretty sure they told us to remove it because of the BBC trademarks.
Yeah, but I mean, that
so
was
we got fired.
Yeah, we got fired. Yeah, that was the first of many projects, I think. And I think the lesson there is, 10 years on, you only really get to know people when you work with them, and you're working, especially in that kind of environment, where it's kind of fun, it's kind of new, it's kind of difficult. And I think we learned a lot about each other and how we perfectly complemented each other. You obviously you've got a very you appealed to me from a business partner sense because you have got a lot in your locker. You're literally you can do everything. We can talk about design, we can talk about technical development, we can talk about marketing, and you've done everything. You can build it all. So for me, as an aspiring entrepreneur back then, or a wantrepreneur, you were the ideal person. You were literally the hacker, right? If you want an MVP built very quickly, you were the guy to do it. And we did that on many occasions while I sat back and drank whiskey.
You're welcome. What was it? The first MVP for that project? In fact, it was we've missed the part that actually you were pitching me your startup idea, and right. You were needing an MVP.
That's right. Oh,
and you paid me £100. I think it was 110 £110.
You do the work.
Yeah, did it as a favor. I made it was a Twitter. What's that?
Did I pay you the £100?
Yeah, you did. Don't worry. You did, and I think it's because you knew that there was a friendship at the end of it. But it was like an aggregated Twitter feed. That was basically the MVP. Like it was, yeah. And I think it was you were trying to pull the data from different sources. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, and so I mean, to quickly fill in the gaps as to, because I'd like to revisit the origin story of Subly. So obviously that was 10 years ago, and then beginning of Subly was 6 years ago, roughly. So what were you doing in between that time for people that don't already know?
Good question. So at that time I was doing lots of little projects on the side. I think I just dropped out of university to then go full time with what was called Pretty Clicks with a K. Mm-hmm. Not that I'm promoting it, but it was with a K. I was doing website design for local businesses and like very cheap websites, but to build up the portfolio. And then, through that experience, as you said, I learned all these skills like marketing development, coding, design. I started with design. Actually, I started with photography. A lot of people don't know this. I started with photography and design.
From right, the clicks, was that not that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, actually, that's right. It was a photography business originally. I used to have my DSLR, and I would do photographs for families and portraits and stuff like that. And then I actually went into graphic design and started designing websites. And I was like, okay, well, I want these websites to do something, actually be websites on the internet. That's when I started learning front end development, which is when I roughly met you. And then no, that's not true. I started learning back end development because I was working on a project with this guy down in England. It was almost like a social network that you would use today. Like you'd say yes or no on a post. It would be media, like a video, a song. Yeah, it was called
Social Whispers.
No, that was another project. It was called Yeah But No.
Okay.
And you basically vote on media, and then we would aggregate it. And so I was doing the front end for that project, and then this guy was doing the back end, and we were collaborating on it. And halfway through, he goes, I don't have the time for this. And I was like, okay. And he was like, but I'm going to give you the code. I was like, right, okay, that's fine. So he gave me the code, and I opened up the files, and I just started reverse engineering it and understanding how one thing does another. I'm a very logically minded person. So I finished the project, and then like, okay, now I can code. And then I couldn't really, in hindsight. It was the worst code ever. But that led me on a path. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm doing these websites for local businesses. How do I promote my services? And that's when I was like, okay, what's this thing? SEO and all these other things that I learned about how to promote the services. Before I knew it, I was running a digital agency, and we had 5 people at its peak. And it was based in Edinburgh in Scotland. And I still kept the name Pretty Clicks all the way through. And then that was when I had the idea for Subly. So before you came into the picture, I'd just come out of a relationship, and this is a true story. I've mentioned this on podcast before, and she knows that I've told people about this story.
We're going there, are we?
We're going there, yeah. So I was in a relationship, and we broke up, and I'm in the office one day, and she's like, I get an email, can I come in for a meeting? I want to discuss a new project that I want to start a business. I was like, okay, yeah, it's fine, come in. So her mum comes in, and the two of them are sitting there and just telling me about their project, mentioning how much the budget is. And then I was like, okay. And it was a subscription business. And I was like, well, I'm aware of Dollar Shave Club, and I'm aware of Gray's Box. I was like,
Dollar Shave Club, that's at the time Dollar Shave Club, but just released a viral video.
Yep.
So I remember watching it.
It was exactly at that time, actually. That was about a year before, I think.
Right.
Because I was still in Glasgow when that came out. So, yeah, wow, that was exactly at the time that I met her, actually. So, yeah, mum and daughter are sitting in the meeting, telling me about their project, and they're like, it's a subscription business, and I was like, what's the budget? And they were like, whatever, insert amount of money here, and I was like, it's not enough money, really. You would have to build that custom because there's nothing in the market that's actually going to do that the way you want it, and that was. Ding! The light bulb moment where I was like, this needs to be done. And I don't know, I felt like this sounds cheesy and woo-woo, but it felt like it was the time, and this was the project that I had to go in on. Because I think this, actually, Lee. I spent so much time thinking about, like, watching fledgling businesses and being like, that is going to blow up. Yeah. And time again, I was like, that business, that getting excited, and then they would blow up.
Yeah, and I think that's something we shared in common, because obviously, when I moved over to the States, we kept in touch, and I feel like we used to always talk about business ideas, and I think at the time, because we were young, we just didn't have the confidence to follow through with it. And then literally 3 to 6 months to a year later, we'd see the exact same businesses launching and then just skyrocketing, just
rocketing. Yeah,
and that's again another lesson for entrepreneurs, and is to have the faith. If you really have that feeling, that instinctual feeling, act on it. Because there's many of both. I think we both agree, and I talk to many people, and there's always that the one that got away almost, and we
absolutely.
sale. But I remember now, fast forwarding a little bit, I remember I was in Austin, Texas.
That's right.
And I think we caught up over the phone or on Skype or whatever it was back then.
Well, that's right. I was actually visiting. I was doing a trip to New Jersey, and I think I was in a bit of another situation, which we're not going to go into. But you said come down and visit. It was South by Southwest that was on.
Yeah, by Southwest. Yeah, that's right. I said, hey.
So I hopped on a plane.
Yeah, and I remember specifically telling me you had something you were working on, and it could be the one. And I remember
you said, yeah, the one. That was it.
And it was, we were sat in that cafe on South Congress in Austin, Texas, just after the bridge. I can't remember what it was called, but
it was the wooden benches.
It was, it was one of those cafes where you walk into and it's just full of startups or startup, workers. It was literally had a really amazing atmosphere, and it was almost like a WeWork, but it was actually a coffee shop. And there were investors in there. I think remember we ended up pitching an investor in that cafe. Were you there, or was that just?
Wait, hold on, that does ring a bell.
Yeah. So I think I've still got him as a contact actually. But yeah, that was, and not only that, there was a Bitcoin cash machine inside the coffee.
That's right.
Shop.
This 6 years ago.
Yeah, 2014, right? I think it was 2014.
Yeah, rough. Yeah, it was, because I went to Los Angeles in 2015.
Yeah, and so and the rest is history. I think.
Actually, I think it's important to mention that basically I pitched it to you, and I hadn't said it. I didn't say much actually, and you went, "I think this is the one," and I went, "It is the one," or something like that. And that was the moment that you were like, "This is great," and we both were so excited for it.
Yeah,
it was a very distinct moment. I do remember it.
Yeah, again, it all goes on those feelings. I think we all have those ideas of businesses, and they sound okay, but it's never a yes. And that's something over time I've learned. Even recently, is if it's not a hell yes, then don't bother even doing it at all.
Because it's going to take a lot longer than you think it's going to take.
Without a doubt. And if you don't have that belief, if you don't have that 100% belief, it's not going to see you through the difficult times. And so, at that point, I think I was in between startups, I think, and I had some time on my hands, and I was ready to get into a project. And I think I, did some heavy lifting for you in the world of Subbly. And quite honestly, I think the reason I enjoyed Subbly is because my previous startup before that was very tech based, and I completely bought into the Silicon Valley tech startup dream, and probably even quickly realized that I wasn't cut out for the tech world. My background is direct response. From 16 years old, I've been in the direct response space, learning a lot. And what I loved about Subbly was it was physical product and tech, and that was the appeal for me, because you get to work with. I remember one of the first kind of promotion pushes we did for Subbly. It was literally picking up the phone. I think we stumbled upon a database of Shopify customers, and literally picked up the phone and started calling them, saying, "Hey, you could be a subscription business. Why pay all that money to get one customer when you could save money, get that customer, and put them on subscription?" I remember that.
Right.
We had one of those cool, very rare moments in the startup world where I think our email inboxes were pretty much crashing, and we couldn't keep up. I remember being in LA and looking at my inbox, and it was just like cha-ching, cha-ching,
That's right. Yeah. And that's when we were we validated the demand. That was it. Yeah.
So that's a little bit of the. That was some good times.
That was, yeah. I think so. To continue that story, because I do think we need to bring it all the way to today. So I think it's important so that people understand who you are and why you're here, because this is almost a full circle. And I was going to mention something earlier actually to you. In fact, I will, but we'll get to it. So Lee wasn't able to continue working with me after a year, and we parted ways. So then it was just back to me on my own again, and then essentially I was on my own for another 2 years, I think. And then I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing and kept going with the path. And then eventually, flash forward to the full 6 years, and that's to today. But Lee and I have been like really good friends ever since.
Yeah.
And we talk, as you said, every like twice a month. And we have such good conversations that we decided that it made sense to actually publish them, essentially. But between us changing trajectories, like what happened between then and now? What journey did you go on?
Yeah, sure. So my tech start. So I was involved with Subly in between. Basically, my tech startup was fizzling out. The writing was on the wall, but we managed to survive and do what we had to do to survive by pivoting basically into quite drastically. We went from a tech business, a tech startup, to a influencer agency, and maybe that's a story for another time. But that was how we were. We were making actually quite good money, and Subly at the time was complete startup, and it didn't have. There was not enough room for both of us, and it was your baby ultimately. So. In a nutshell, it was the right thing for me to kind of step away. I got involved in, my pivoted and evolved business, which was in the influencer space. And, I quickly realized that, I didn't want to be in the influencer space, quite honestly. And again, there's going to be, I think, continuing themes, underlying themes as to our conversations. And, this one is about passion. If you're not passionate about something, don't do it. And again, I ended up with an influencer agency, and it was relatively successful, but it wasn't my passion. I ended up doing that out of survival instinct to keep my startup afloat. And so I started gradually, working with more people, working with more brands, and figuring out that I wanted to get back to basically direct response and e-commerce at the time. And over the course of the years, so as it stands right now, I basically have what I call an e-commerce marketing consultagency. We're not an agency in the traditional sense, and it's it's pretty much a mix between me as a consultant, and I have a small number of employees that work with me on various projects, and those projects are working with 7 to 8 figure brands, whilst also working with startup e-commerces for trying to take them from idea to validation to then scale, whilst also growing my own projects as well on the side. So over the past 4 or 5
what skills did you pick up during that period of time? Like, what would you say, like, you really, really dialed into? Like, what muscle did you work out?
Good question. Look, out of necessity, when you have an e-commerce business, or you are trying to grow an e-commerce business of any size, for me, the number one areas of focus should be Facebook and Instagram ads, and email marketing. Look, and the reason being, you can kind of include Google in there as well, but at the core, you have to validate a business as quickly as possible, and Facebook allows you to do that. You literally spend money, get money back, or don't get money back, and you can pretty much see from after 2-3 weeks, you can get a really good idea as to whether it's worth continuing with that business. And that's a cycle that I'm in regularly, and some of them make it for a year, 2 years. Some of them make it for 5 years. Some of them make it for 2 weeks. It's pretty obvious. So that's pretty much where I spend most of my time. I would say, look, I don't feel comfortable with the word expert, because ultimately what I do in e-commerce is performance marketing. So you have to be a really good student instead of because it's all data. Every single business, every single niche, every single audience is completely different. You just have to be a really good student, know where to test very quickly, look at that data, learn from it, and make calculated decisions very quickly. And that's what I do, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that's funny because we joined in this kind of point in our lives, and then kind of went like that, and then we strengthened different muscles and in terms of the skill sets, and now we're back here doing the show, which I think is like full circle. And you're working with these incredibly awesome brands that I think I know some of them that you've mentioned, and I think it's really cool to see like that full circle.
Yeah, and look, this is, I think, my intention to get on these podcasts with you is, we were all of a sudden, I think we realized we were talking and learning from each other again. Where before we were kind of in the same trench, right? And then being in trenches and learning from each other. And your responsibility now is leading a company that ultimately creates a service for people similar to me. And I've been in that cycle constantly of working where I can maybe I can help share those experiences and add some value to your Subly Rockstars.
Yeah.
Whilst also
to be rockstars. What's that? Whilst learning what?
Whilst also learning from you as well.
Oh yeah. Well, that's another thing we learning from each other. Yeah, it's funny because the Rockstars podcast is for the rockstars, and then I think it's to educate people who want to be the rockstars as well. So I think that's where the idea comes from. Yeah, so I think we've given enough on the backstory, and
one story though that I think is worth sharing.
Go on, it better be good. I'm gonna pour some more whiskey while you.
100% certain it's good. I just don't know how comfortable you are sharing it. But look, I remember when we first spent time in Silicon Valley, I basically said, look, let's just test the waters with investors. So we did the whole, Sandhill Road,
That's right.
investors. And do you remember what you used to wear to the pictures with the venture capital?
Oh no!
Please.
To all of the investors that we met and Duncan Logan, because I remember. So here's another cool little story. The world's so small, man. Anyway, I wore my kilt.
Yes, to the
kilt. Cheers. To the kilt. It did definitely get attention, but it got bad and mostly bad attention actually. But it probably stuck in their minds.
Yeah, no, I think. Look, I remember when you first shared the idea.
Can't believe you mentioned that.
I remember thinking, that's a great idea, but there's no way you would do it, and you did do it. But I think the more, Subly was literally 4 weeks old at that point, and we were having conversations with investors who, like most investors do with 2, 3, 4 week old businesses, is gives a hard time and tell us. Come back when we've actually got something to show, right?
Once we've achieved something.
Like your tail was definitely between your legs in that kilt. The more
Well, yeah, I think the only person that even moderately appreciated it was Duncan.
It was Duncan, yeah.
So the story there is that Duncan Logan actually went to the same high school, or we call it secondary school in the UK, secondary school as me when he was younger, and he lives in San Francisco, and he's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I think just to give people context, he used to run. Well, I think he still is involved in a startup accelerator that housed the likes of was it Spotify? There was Spotify. There was some really big. I remember going into their offices and seeing all the logos. There's some really big players in there, and he was very inspirational for us because he was from the UK. when Silicon Valley is an intimidating place, he kind of gave some really, really good advice and encouragement, didn't he?
Yeah. In fact, one of the things that he taught us, and this stuck with me, and this applies to every business, and I think this is really important. I knew these shows were going to be good. He basically, so we're able to actually bestow everything that we learned the hard way with people who are also going to have similarly hard lessons. But he basically said, look, you have to imagine, so the most important thing of all for any business is product market fit. And we abbreviated that as PMF, right? So product market fit is basically when it just clicks. There's this moment in time where it clicks because your product fits the market, and the market wants what you're making, wants what you have, what you're offering, and it's at the right price point with the right messaging, and everything just lines up, and it's called product market fit. And we didn't have that at all at that stage. Like, this is like very nascent early stages of the product. And then basically he had this analogy, which was, imagine you have a brick wall. There's a tiny little hole in the wall, and you've got a hose, and it's a big hose. There's a lot of water coming out, but it's very narrow. But basically, you can't. You're moving the hose, and there's water like going through the hole a little bit because of the spray, and some of it will go through the hole. But you've got to keep trying. You're almost, I think he said like blindfolded or something. I don't know. Like, you basically keep moving the hose until the water goes through the hole. No, you wouldn't be doing it blindfolded 100%. No, you have to see where you're going, but keep moving the hose until eventually more of the water is going through the hole. And that's the moment when you get product market fit. And that analogy stuck in my head forever.
Yeah, like, me too. I remember.
Thanks, Duncan.
Because I remember the exact same story, and it stuck in my head too. And just so you know, to business owners out there, product market fit isn't something that happens. Pinterest is a really good example of product market fit. I've been fortunate to spend time with the guys at Pinterest, and they existed for, I think, 5 or 6 years before they actually made it as Pinterest.
Because they were an agency or something, weren't they, before?
I think it was like an arts and crafts type business. It wasn't even called Pinterest, but it's Ben Silverman, I think he's called. Just kept on going and going and going. And again, just spraying the wall, and eventually, I think one of those bricks would go loose, and you push one of the bricks through with the.
He said that.
No. I'm giving.
I see.
Of product market fit. Basically, it can take. I think what I'm trying to communicate is how it can take a long time. So it's not something you can do within the validation phase. You can validate an idea, but then you scale it towards product market fit, right?
Yeah.
And product market fit is then where you can scale it even more.
Right. That's it. Because that when you put more in, it's going to just fill up the bucket on the other side.
Product market fit, normally after product market fit, is like the exponential growth.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, there's a really good chart out there, actually, a really good graph. It's ClassPass.
Right.
Hey guys, are we going to do a Q&A?
Well, we should definitely do a Q&A.
Well, we will do a Q&A, but it won't be about Subly, just to be clear, because I know this is on the Facebook group, but we won't be doing like a Q&A about the product or about the service per se, but what we can do a Q&A about is anything that we're discussing here, or anything to do with e-commerce in general, and like starting a business and growing a business. So, and by the way, whoever's commenting from Facebook, we can't see your name. So either type your name in the comments, or there's a link inside of the description that you can click to authenticate Facebook, and then we'll be able to see your name. But and Andrea is the best. Cheers, Andrea. To Andrea. Okay, yeah. Okay, well let's segue a little bit here. I feel like we've been talking about the backstory quite a bit, and we're actually 40 minutes in already, which is surprising. But there's an obvious situation at hand. I'm sure it's been overshared, and not overshared, but over discussed, and we've all got thoughts and opinions on it, and we're probably all quite over it at this stage. But the topic is Corona and COVID-19. So let's talk about that for a second. Are you? So we're in a very unique situation where you've got the perspective from being in the trenches from the e-commerce side, from doing marketing and sales. And in fact, you were on one of our podcast episodes giving your comments and thoughts and advice on it. From my perspective, I'm able to give some insight from what we're seeing and observing across the Subly platform with all of the merchants that power their businesses with us. Yeah, so sure. Why don't we begin with, well, first of all, let's review what's happened in the last month and a half, 6 weeks. Like what from your perspective?
Well, I mean, look, it's, without trying to get into too much detail, because, we could spend hours talking about the subject, the overarching or high level observation that I'm making, and I guess many of my peers, is, there's a big leveling out happening. And, this happens in, in the economy, it happens in nature, it sometimes happens and sometimes is necessary. But, from my point of view is, as an e-commerce guy, look, us e-commerce guys have been flying the flag for the last, for me, I've been flying that flag and for the past 6 years, telling everybody to go all in e-commerce. And by all in, I don't mean, neglecting other channels. I don't mean neglecting multi-channel marketing at all. What I mean by going all in is go all in e-commerce. Don't do e-commerce just to have a presence, right? So talking, a lot of businesses have slowly kind of transitioned and tested, and e-commerce is hard. It's a struggle. So a lot of people have kind of gone, no, we're a little bit comfortable because we're making money in retail, we're making money through other channels. Now those companies are playing catch up. Again, I'm really fortunate that all the brands I work with, and the kind of diverse, I've got a good indication of different consumer behaviors across different verticals. But most of my clients had a really good month last month, because people are spending. Yes, there's times of uncertainty, but people are spending, and a lot of ad budgets have been pulled, which is.
This is the interesting part, isn't it? Because people have some businesses have scaled back their advertising, haven't they? Yeah. So, but at the same time, I think it's counterintuitive, because I think, although you can comment on the what that means by people scaling back their budgets, but what I think from a business perspective is that it's counterintuitive that in a time of crisis, you shouldn't be scaling back on advertising. You should be scaling back on other costs, because the cash is the oxygen for your business. And if you starve the growth, the thing that's feeding the growth and therefore the cash, you're actually going to perpetuate the problem and make it a lot worse.
Yeah.
So you should actually increase the budget on your advertising, or maintain it and cut it back elsewhere where you can, and become more lean. Use it as an opportunity to get even leaner.
Yeah. And that's a really good point and a good comment. And that was my, as soon as this all happened, that was my advice and my instant, intuition. Okay, now's the time to double down, because I have confidence that everything we've put in place is now. This is the perfect time to scale. So logic says scale. But to be honest with you, after a few conversations with the business owners, you realize that there's other factors. This is such a unique situation, and with so much uncertainty, you realize that actually. Doubling down on sales and then having to furlough, 50 people, that's not responsible. That's something that businesses have to be aware of.
I see. Yeah.
And that was a lesson that I learned, because, my aggressiveness, being in the trenches where it's survivors. Okay, let's double down. There's a lot of businesses as well that, with many employees, you've got to think a little bit more, act a little bit more responsibly.
I think so. Yeah, I think what you're saying is that, correct me if I'm wrong, it's different for bigger businesses that have got employees to take care of, and people who are not essential for the business are furloughed typically in this situation in the UK. In the US, I think it's different. But
yeah, and that's just one example. That again, every business is different. And some businesses, for example, that I'm aware of or involved in, it's it's a case of you don't want too much back orders. You don't want to start taking orders when you can't fulfill them because you've got warehouses in China, or you've got there's huge consequences to that as well. So there's multiple different things. But look, ultimately a few clients have doubled down. A few have just scaled back just because there's so much uncertainty in this particular situation that it's a kind of a safe thing to do. But even still, then you've got to be smart in where you allocate that ad spend. So the way I have done it is basically reduced costs as per the powers that be, but then reallocated the ad spend to funnel rather than top of funnel. So all those people,
it broke up for a second there. Top of funnel, you moved it from top of funnel to where?
To middle and bottom, and
okay.
actually post funnel as well, because in times like this every dollar counts. Look, we've spent you spend money to acquire a customer. It takes so much to there's so much trust involved in that customer handing over their money that of that. So rather than trying to get new sales, a smart thing to do would be, let's just focus on our existing customers and increase the lifetime value of that customer by selling them products similar or in complementary to the product that they've initially bought, right? Yeah. So your whole that's
maximizing.
That's something, again, like it's important to still not turn off that tap in the top of funnel, because it'll be a point in time where you need new leads, you need new prospects, because you've exhausted your bottom funnel and post funnel leads. So it's just about thinking and responding differently to the situation.
We have a couple of questions coming in, by the way. Just I don't want to lose them, so let's jump into them quickly. First one is, I'm just going to bring it on the screen. The question is, what kind of subscription do you think will fly in 2020, especially taking into account coronavirus? So I personally think that the place to focus right now, and what we're seeing based on the data inside of Subly, is that the essentials naturally are performing a lot better. Like instantly, like food related services, for example, or necessities, they are exploding because people are needing them and they can't go out, or they would rather not go to the shops. And also, interestingly, another area is entertainment, because people are sitting at home bored. They want something to do, and fitness, health and fitness, entertainment. So those are the areas to focus. And just remember, it isn't a zero-sum game. Like if you have a good product and you have a good, the correct marketing, you're gonna be able to build a customer base, an audience. It's not a zero-sum game. I think a lot of people get really hung up on, that business already exists. That's okay. Just do it your way. Do it in a way that's going to resonate with a subset of the market for that you can relate to, that's similar to you as a person. I think that covers that one off. And then Cassie Simmons is asking, speaking of coronavirus and supply chain limitations and being able to fulfill orders, does Subly have? I said no feature requests or feature related questions. Yeah, we do have inventory. I shouldn't have clicked on that one. I should have read it before I put it on the screen. Basically we do have that feature. It's in a private beta just now, though. Thanks, Cassie. Okay, so let's continue with the conversation about the coronavirus for a second, because you're talking about how basically focusing on the middle and the bottom of the funnel. Can you give a quick synopsis of what that means, by the way? Top, middle, bottom, and post.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of top of funnel is I run Facebook ads, Instagram ads, cold traffic, interruption marketing to top of funnel. You're trying to get people's attention to communicate your product and your service. And very rarely can you make money from someone seeing an ad from cold traffic instantly to then making a purchase. They need there's many factors, multiple factors that go into them making a purchase, which is normally where the middle and bottom of funnel comes in. So it's ways to build trust, ads that talk about the brand, that showed testimonials from other customers. They're kind of the middle of funnel. They get it basically as a case of how close they are to checking out. If they visited a landing page, then they're a bit further down the funnel. If they've clicked on add to cart, then they're really low down on the funnel. If they've started the checkout process, then they're literally right at the bottom of the funnel. And there's different ways of nudging them through that. And post funnel is once you've got a customer in your cart or in your checkout process, then can you then upsell them and cross sell them and increase the average order value? And a thing I always like to, most e-commerce people know this already, but one of the big messages that I like to communicate with every business is don't build your business thinking that you'll make money from the first purchase. Advertising costs, technology is great because it's basically allowed us all to very easily set up a business through Subly, for example, right? But with that become rising costs because everyone's trying to make it as a business. So gone are the days, 15 years ago, you could run a Facebook ad for $1 and you could get a sale for $50 and you're rolling in the cash. More and more people are getting wise to that, and the ad costs have risen, and therefore it's very, very difficult to be profitable from the first purchase. So with e-commerce, the profit is on the back end. You have to monetize the back end. And that's where, you've paid, think about how hard you've worked to get that first sale. You don't just stop, and you're breaking even at that. So allocate a lot of your time, focus on the back end through upsells, through email on
subscription. That's where subscription comes in.
That's why for every business every project that I work on, every business that I have my eye on, and to potentially invest in or buy, that has to be one of the criteria. It has to be a consumable, a replenishable, or a continuity business, because the money is made on the back end.
Yeah, and I think it's important that people understand what the funnel means, because I think the terms are used so broadly once you're inside of like the world of marketing and e-commerce. So yeah, I'm glad that you were able to give like a really good explanation of it.
It's you can Google. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I'm not that smart, to be quite honest with you. But it's very simple. As a funnel, you feed the funnel at the top that normally costs money, and then you literally try and get them out of the funnel. And once the water's flowing, that's the money flowing. So give that attention.
Yeah, and I guess also another way to remember is that each rung of the funnel is smaller going this way because there's a drop off. So like 100%, 80%, 60%, 5% or whatever.
Future episodes we can go more in more detail about this. There's a project that I'm working on at the moment in the men's skincare space, and it may be a good idea for me to actually be a little bit transparent with. It's a kind of a passion project, funny story basically, but I'll share it with you very quickly. I was at a conference last year in San Diego, and in the conference area, there was a guy basically selling LinkedIn photos. So he was a professional photo shoot, and I was like, you know what, I need a professional LinkedIn profile. So I went over and he gave me the spiel. It was like $60. I sat down in a chair. He had like a little makeup artist just giving me like some makeup to look good. He took the photos and said, look, it'll be with you within a week. Check your email, we'll send it. So I was waiting for a week to send the photos, to see the photos. They arrived in my inbox. I clicked open, and it wasn't horrendous, the photo, but it was the lighting was perfect. So my newly found wrinkles, crow's feet. And I had one of those moments where I was like, holy shit. Like, and
then he cross-sold you skincare. Oh no, he didn't.
No, he cross-sold me Photoshop. He said, okay, this is what you paid for.
What?
If you could touch this up. If you want this Photoshop, then it's another.
That is genius. Wow.
I was a cheapskate completely, because I basically went into, like, I'm not even Photoshop. I think it was like Apple Editor, and just edited out my.
He probably bloody drew them in there.
Yeah, but one of those moments where
MS Paint.
I need to start taking my skincare routine seriously. I completely neglected it my whole life, and I started looking at the products on the market for men, and saw an opportunity in the market. And so that's one of the projects that I've got bubbling on the side that maybe it's worth being a little bit transparent about with you guys, because again, it's replenishable. There will be a time where I will need to use Subly for the recurring revenue, which is where the gold is. So maybe that's something we can do.
Yeah, that does sound good, actually. But it would be good to like follow that journey and then see, where it lands. And even if it doesn't work, and to be honest with you, I think skincare is an emerging industry for men. Aside from that trend, even if it didn't work, it would still be good to break down why, the failures of it in real time. Yeah. Okay, so by the way, I'm astonished at that guy using bad lighting to then sell you on Photoshop. That's
bad lighting. I think it was good lighting in terms of it was too good that it allowed.
Come on, there's a play there. There's a play there, and maybe I was expecting you to say, and then he cross-sold me my anti-wrinkle.
He should be doing. Maybe I need to get in contact. And
that's funny.
That's called a good tripwire. For those that
100%. My friend calls it a burning platform. Like if there's like a pain point, an actual pain point, like an insecurity or something's hurting, you're much more likely to action it and spend money on it. I personally don't like businesses like that because they're preying, unless they actually really genuinely want to help. So it's a difficult area to kind of for me to kind of feel comfortable talking about. But yeah, it is a good tripwire. There's a couple comments coming in here. So the first one here is Stefan, we are launching subscription box for eco-friendly products. Do you think there's a place on the market for this? Well, it depends on the product. I mean, there's a lot of eco-friendly products out there. I think that's the way that things are moving, and I think they will continue to move that way. So absolutely, just really depends on the products. If it's eco-friendly essentials, great, there'll be a market for it. The amazing thing about the internet is that you can talk to anyone. There's everybody that you ever need to tap into or talk to. There's so many little niches and pockets that are actually substantial now that you can actually build a business around them. So yeah, I do think there's a market for it. I'm actually sorry, before you jump in there, one really important thing is that people get hung up on this idea of being a mass scale business. I think that's dangerous, actually.
Yeah, 100%.
Because not every business can be a massive enterprise. It's just it's just statistically impossible. But I think it's okay to have like a small 100,000, $500,000, $1 million a year business. That's gonna change your life anyway, and that's okay. I mean, I would focus on getting there first. I'm not saying don't set the bar high, but it's a trap because you feel really disappointed if you don't hit these really lofty goals. Now, and we're getting into mental health now. I've been there. I've done that. I've got all the t-shirts in that regard, like putting too much pressure on myself and setting really stupid high goals. But I think we're at an hour already. We could dive into it. We could do Joe Rogan right now and do a 2-hour episode if you want.
I think before I do that, I'd love to be able to just kind of add on to that.
Sorry, I kind of digressed.
Yeah, no, because it kind of continues what I was saying about the leveling out of e-commerce right now, about the well-known brands that we are so used to now struggling. What's going back to the eco-friendly business, 100% that can work because it's probably, again, I'm making a little bit of an assumption, but it probably has a story behind it. And it has an end goal and mission that positively impacts the world, right? And this is, these are the times now where a lot of consumers are losing trust in the big brands that don't have stories and missions behind them. Okay, so and this again, this COVID-19 situation is kind of exposing those companies. I think it was it Casper or Purple? You know, the companies. I think they almost
mattresses
are really struggling right now, which is a massive surprise to me, because I look at them as, you know, a very successful brand, but they are very big now. You know, they were a startup. They had a story. They had a good end goal, and they grew and grew and grew and grew. And then once you get to a certain point, it loses the essence. The story gets diluted down because you've gone into the mass, and therefore that can, you know, Shopify, Amazon sellers, like there's a lot of people selling products with stories behind them. And for me, I see a future where instead of many small businesses and brands and select few big ones, it's going opposite. It's going back to a lot of smaller brands and businesses, because people want stories, they want emotion, they want to feel connected to something that has value and a good end goal. And it's hard to keep that once you get to a certain point and grow exponentially. So I guess that answers two questions for me: is, you know, current state of e-commerce, how it's affecting us, and also you know, whether eco-friendly business is a good vertical to go into.
Yeah, those are some really good points, man. I think you're right. The story is really important for people to connect to it. And I think from a marketing perspective, it's your best weapon when you start a business. Like, to be able to be small, or not to be small, but to be connected to your audience.
Yeah,
to be able to show that you're real. Okay, there's another question here. Before I make some comments on Corona from Subly's perspective, I realize that we're at an hour, but I'm happy to continue. I think Joe Rogan's are usually like 2 hours anyway. So, by the way, I watched the episode last night. It was really good.
How long was it? Normally 3 hours.
2 hours. Really?
I don't know. I've seen Joe Rogan episodes that are 3 hours long, so I just normally look at the bite-sized segments. You know, I've never once listened to a 3 hour Joe Rogan episode. That's pretty hardcore.
Yeah, I mean, I watched half an hour and then that was enough, but it was still really good. Very interesting. Okay, so the question was, do you think, hold on, I'll bring it up. Do you think there's another way to validate an idea outside of Facebook ads? Yeah, absolutely. You know that Subly didn't run any Facebook ads for the first, I'm going to say 3 years, maybe 4 years. And because after Lee and I changed, went separate paths, Lee was forever, actually I'll keep it on the screen, shocked that we basically weren't doing much marketing. We spent a lot of time in content and like building the community. And I think, you know, it's not for every business. I'm not saying it can, because some businesses it just probably won't make that much sense for. But yeah, absolutely. There's so many different ways of building a business. There's no one size fits all, but there are obviously playbooks that work as well, though, just to say that. But yeah, Facebook ads is just a really fast way to do it.
Subly is a different type of business, you know, assuming that this is a direct consumer kind of business. Is like you can. I was on an accelerator program with my first startup, and you know, the goal of that program is to accelerate your business and to validate it as soon as possible. And we literally got told to go out into the city center or the downtown and go up to people and say, "Hey, this is what we're offering. Would you buy it?" Mm-hmm. That's one way of, you know, validating an idea. The beautiful thing is, to me, I can do that on Facebook to millions of people if I want. You know, So if there's definitely, you don't have to just use Facebook to validate an idea. Family and friends, go out into the street, just get the idea and get feedback to as many people as possible. And Facebook's just a really easy way to do that.
Yeah. Of course, there's all the other platforms as well, but it's just the targeting's so good on Facebook that you can actually do it. I mean, it is getting more expensive, but yeah, I mean, Long term, probably not. I mean, you probably will keep it as part of your marketing strategy long term, but it's not. You can't rely on it 100% after a certain point. Like, you can't keep all your eggs in one basket.
No, and I think again, if you're in the validation phase, then you have to, don't try and make money from sales. Don't go into this for the first 3 months.
Yeah,
you write off
good point.
You spend, because instead of, you will get sales, but basically what you're doing is paying to learn whether someone wants to buy it, what they look like, how old they are, what color underwear they wear. That's the most valuable thing you can take from spending on Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah, and also learning if your product's good enough or not. Like, is the offering good? Is the packaging good? Is the quality of the products good? I will say this, that's one thing about a community that's good, is that you can actually have that two-way conversation. I mean, I don't do customer support. I used to do customer support. I don't do customer support anymore because I could never do as good a job that Andrea does. There's just no way.
Can we shout out Andrea?
Yeah, and I think Andrea's in the comments right now. Andrea, cheers, by the way, to the best head of customer support on the planet. I actually have to sip to that. So, oops, spilling on equipment. That's not good. You just see like bzz, bzz, and the smoke appears. Yeah. So, where was I? Sorry.
I think you were pouring yourself another drink, no?
Not yet. It's fine. There's another comment I just wanted to bring here. We love you too. Whoever you are, we love you too. And maybe that's actually Andrea. If it is to Andrea, it's even more appropriate. It makes much more sense. Cheers. Somebody else has commented with the whiskey glasses. Speculate to accumulate, Cassie says. Yeah, absolutely. You have to. It's dangerous to be, thinking, as you said, Lee, that, I'm thinking about profit off the first sale. Like, you can't think like that, because, again, going back to what I was saying before about mindset and like setting goals too high, you're setting yourself up for failure. Like, you should assume failure. Like, that is a fact that you're going to encounter what I call micro failures. In fact, my belief is you only fail when you give up, when you say you failed. That's the truth.
Yeah.
Like, 4 years into Subly, I had been told by all of my entrepreneur friends, bar you actually, what are you doing? Why are you still doing it? Why, it's not growing fast enough. And I felt so like conflicted, because these people were very successful entrepreneurs versus my internal belief that this is going to work out. But, that mental health aspect of like not setting yourself up for failure, and actually not giving up and saying, okay, each micro failure is leading me to the success, and not saying, okay, I've failed. Because as soon as you say I've failed, you have failed. Of course you have, by definition. You're not on the track anymore. You're not running. You're not racing. I think it's important for people to recognize that, because there's so much talk of failure. And I think failure is such a doomsday word. Failure is great. That's when you learn the most and the quickest.
Yeah, I think, for me, having worked with you, that is one of the biggest things I admire about you, is your resilience and your Scottish stubbornness. That is complete. When people tell you to stop, you almost even more so want to prove them wrong. And that's focus, and that's belief, and ultimately focus and belief and resilience are the three things you need to succeed. Nothing else. Skill helps, other things help, but when it comes down to it, especially when you're starting something from the bottom up, it's about passion, belief, resilience, and stubbornness in your case.
Yeah, stubbornness. Yeah, I think I came up with a 3 Ps, and then I eventually turned it into 4 Ps. It was like patience, practice, persistence, and I can't remember the fourth one now. That's because of the whiskey. I blame the whiskey. Persistence, patience, practice,
Perseverance.
passion. I think it was passion. But yeah, the 4 Ps, like I genuinely believe in that. But with that said, talking about failure, micro failures, and all the 4 Ps and all that jazz, I think that ultimately, there's a really good expression that I heard when I was going into the office before Corona, and I bumped into a guy who I've known for a very long time, actually, who also is in the same building now. And it was, again, another one of those coming back full circle, crossing paths with him. Talking of resilient and stubborn and persistent people, he is one of the top ones that I know. He said to me, he was like, I had a call with somebody, and he said, his investor, I think it was, said, you're not wrong until the market tells you you are.
Mm.
And in that is, you could be persistent, but in the wrong area. So like going to like the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Like if your business is fundamentally flawed or there's not a market for it, then you have to change direction. You have to adapt. And that's another thing. People get these ideas in their head. They're like, oh, I've got this this business idea, and they get hung up on it, and they think that changing direction a little bit is like is a sign of failure. But it's not actually. It's you learning. It's actually the natural evolution for your business to be successful. So don't get hung up on that either. But anyway, I'm digressing here. I'm going off on that.
I think that's very healthy information. Very healthy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big proponent and believer in mental health and get your head right before everything else. And there's a lot of neurosis in the entrepreneur world and community. And I think that there's so much praising of overworking and an unhealthy attitude and mindset. Don't get me wrong, I work way too hard. Like there's no doubt in my mind that I work too hard, but like it's trying to get that balance. And if you get your mind right, then it gets easier. That's all it is. It makes it easier. It makes your day-to-day easier, your life happier, and therefore you enjoy the process. Because that's it. Oh, we could get, there's so many topics, man. Going into the end destination versus the journey, but now we're getting onto the Gary V stuff.
Yeah.
That's very Gary V. Okay, so I think we've covered off. Oh, actually, we didn't even get into the Sublease perspective on coronavirus.
There you go.
I'll summarize it very quickly. Basically, what we're seeing is that businesses are moving online, and there's a lot of success, as I said, in essentials and entertainment, and health and fitness. And I think that my prediction, going based on the data, so we've seen a lot of influx of people moving their businesses online, but also an influx of spending online. All positive signs across the board. But however, I remain cautious but optimistic that the spending will continue and the trend will continue, but it's going to slow down a little bit as the reality of the situation where people are starting to hold back on the money spending because they realize that the economy really is not broken, but very wounded. I mean, in the UK, I think that we're going to actually survive better as opposed to the US's economy. But yeah, I mean, but then again, don't forget that in a recession, there's still opportunity. I mean, it's wealth distribution. So money isn't stopping flowing; it's just changed where it's going. So there's still opportunity in a recession. So I don't think it will necessarily contract online. I think it's going to continue. I think the coronavirus has basically accelerated the evolution or the adoption of e-commerce. What would have happened in like a year into like a month? I think maybe 6 months to a month. But
I agree. And that applies to many other things outside of business as well. And that's why it's a lot of opportunity amongst the chaos.
Opportunity amongst the chaos. Sounds like a new blog. Opportunity. Okay, so let's talk about. And I know we're going on. We're good on time. So
Do we still have people watching here, or have we got their attention? Or
well, actually, I think we do. We've got some sticky people still engaged and watching, which is great.
So sense. That's good.
What's that?
We're making some sense. That's good.
Hopefully, if we're not, then I would hope that they would tell us in the comments. Maybe the whiskey. Do we need to drink more whiskey? Is that the answer? Okay, so just let's take a wee pause. Actually, it's a good point. Let's take a pause because I just want to mention that on this show in the future, we want to make this regular, probably every 2 weeks, I reckon, to start with, or maybe I don't know. We'll see. But we'll be announcing it on the Facebook group and through the Subly channels, basically. If you want to stay tuned, I would recommend subscribing to the Subscription Rockstars podcast. I would also make sure that if you're watching this, to join the Facebook group Subscription Box Entrepreneurs. It's free and there's over 5,200 members, other people on a similar journey to you, sharing and learning from one another. It's an excellent resource. But the other thing as well is if you actually have questions, write them in the comments and we'll attack them. And then also, if you're an e-commerce expert yourself, if you really know your stuff, or like actually not even just experts, if you've in the early stages but you've got a little bit of success and you're kind of like you've got 100 plus subscriptions and you're kind of like really getting into it, would love to have you featured on the show. Like we can do call outs so that basically you can come and join us and we'll do like a quick 2 or 3 minute segment, and then we'll probably do that with like a few people on each episode. And then I think in some episodes or shows we'll have like anchor like guests who stay with us for the whole time as well, like 3 of us. But yeah, just to kind of give some context on that. I see some comments coming in. Follow us on Instagram. Kiwi EcoBox. Nice. That's the eco-friendly one. I don't see a name, so I don't know it's the same user, but the Kiwi EcoBox. Nice. Next Friday, you guys are launching. Follow us on Instagram. Check out Kiwi EcoBox on Instagram. Good luck with that, and keep us updated. Cool. So, do you want to talk about trends?
Sure.
Trends, like general trends, like I don't mind what topics we go into in that overarching topic of trends. But we could go into the technical side if you wanted. We could also go into the actual like products and what you're seeing happening in the field, like what products are picking up online. Just as quick overview of what you're seeing, because I think you're probably closest to. I mean, I've given comments on it already regarding coronavirus.
Yeah, I mean, obviously right now, one of the biggest shifts in behaviors by e-commerce companies that I've seen is a lot of them trying to create digital content as well, for obvious reasons. So that's one big trend, and I think that's going to be fascinating because you think about all these brands that we've been used to buying physical goods from for so long, just to see what comes out of that and what those digital products look like. So that's one trend. The other trends, I'm seeing a lot in pet food and pet products, basically, which is fascinating. It makes sense. People really care about the pets, and even in times like this, they're spending more time with the pets. So that's just something. Look, I'm always trying to keep my eye out on businesses to work with and get involved in other capacities. And pets are where it's at. People spend a lot of money on the pets. So
a quick shout out to Buster Box.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. I don't know if you want any kind of, what's that at the top of my head, two that I can really think of. How about you?
See, this is where I wish I was actually closer to the data. Like, I was actually digging into the specific niches that we're seeing sign up. I think that, well, first of all, subscription is a trend. I would say that that's the first trend. And I think that, especially given coronavirus, people are realizing that subscription is definitely here to stay. People have always asked that question: is subscription a fad, or subscription boxes a fad? Well, subscription is so complicated. There's so many different aspects to subscription. It's not just boxes.
Is it not the oldest business model in the world?
Yeah, basically. What was it? The milkman and the paperboy.
Newspapers, yeah, exactly.
And gas and electricity and all everything in between. It's all subscription billing. Yeah. Just we're getting more and more used to it on the internet as well now. So it's definitely a trend from a technical perspective. I think what I anticipate is, I think you mentioned this earlier, that the barrier to entry is getting higher from a cost perspective, but at the same time, I'm seeing new tech always coming online, which is also offsetting that. It's kind of like this up down kind of effect that's causing the cost to kind of come down. You were going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say a really good trend. This should have been my first answer. For e-commerce entrepreneurs, YouTube ads. Look, I don't know if it's trending as such, but from personal experience, YouTube ads is similar to what Facebook used to be, 4, 5, 6 years ago, where it's still ripe enough and not mainstream fully adopted by the bigger brands, where you can actually probably, don't quote me or don't hold me responsible. You can probably, make money much easier than other areas. So how I'm currently exploring using YouTube is just for retargeting. Because look, I'm spending every time I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is put my Apple TV and YouTube on, and I watch. I catch up on the latest news videos on YouTube. That's literally. I watch YouTube more than I watch any other platform. And so there's there's some brands on there, but in terms of ad cost and inventory, it's not, Facebook and Instagram's ad inventory is maxed out to the limit. YouTube is not, and therefore you can get a lot of bang for your buck. So I encourage you, again, look, thinking outside the box, just run a few video ads. And what do those video ads look like? Do not go for the polished brand videos. If look, I see it time and time again, people and brands spending a lot of money on a polished, professional, really on-brand video. And honestly, what's even more effective is a mobile phone and someone giving a video review or testimonial of the product, because it's trust. People trust people. Again, it goes back to that conversation about brands lose it. People, to stop the feed now, to stop the feed, you create user-generated content as an ad, because people are interested in user-generated content.
That's definitely a trend, or rather, it's not even a trend. That's a good piece of advice, because I've been waking up to this actually very recently. That one of the most important sales mechanisms ever, and probably number one actually, and I think it's underrated and people don't realize it's social proof.
Yeah, probably. Right?
Like I've tested this with myself. I go on a website and I see there's no testimonials, no chance I'm going to buy it, even if it's the nicest looking website, and it's got the best price point. I'm just not gonna engage with it if there's no social proof. Yeah. If there's social proof and it's an ugly website and the price isn't that great, it's average, I'm still gonna buy it because I feel safe. And I think that people really need to understand that social proof is literally number one. And I think that's because we're human, we're animals. We feel safety in numbers and safety in belonging. I think it says like basic psychology. And so what's that?
Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
That's the one. Yeah. So, I think with that said, what you're talking about is basically saying user-generated content is an ad. So if you have a customer who loves your product and they record it, and then you post that as an ad, that has got built-in social proof, is what I'm trying to say.
A little hack for people out there.
And it's cheap.
When you acquire a customer and you get your first purchase, send them an email and tell them that you will send them a product for free if they leave you a video review. And use that video review in all your top of funnel advertising. And I guarantee you'll get better results with that raw video testimonial review than any polished brand type ad. Is
that in addition to what they've already purchased?
Yeah, I would say basically let them make the purchase and say, hey, like, look, we will send you a free product if you give us send us a video testimonial.
I like that.
There's multiple ways you can build that in, but honestly, what I suppose the point I'm trying to make is, people pay money to get video testimonials from their customers. So integrate it into your funnel, and because that it might cost you. Let's say you sell, skincare for $30. You might send one for free, but you're getting a video testimonial for $30. And people spend tens of thousands of dollars on photo shoots and videos. Trust me, that $30 of giving away a free product will serve you as good, probably better. I'd be willing to say much better.
Yeah, actually, even more so. Like I was going to say, refer a friend campaigns like are good because you're not actually giving up money in some cases. Like on Subly, you do it like credits. So like that's cheap because you're not actually spending the money. You're giving it away from your future earnings, right? So, but I think what you're saying is even better because it's higher leverage. So you're basically like, you give a product for free, but you're not just getting an additional customer. You're actually paying about the same amount of price, same amount of money, again, from future earnings. But you're actually getting an asset that you can use to generate more sales.
Absolutely. You can two birds with one stone.
I like that a lot.
So that's cool. A nice way to maybe end the first episode on.
That's what I'm thinking. And just to mention again, if you do want to join us on the next episode of Subscription Rockstars Live, then DM Subly on Instagram. Make sure you give us a follow. And as I said, subscribe to the podcast as well because Lee was on one of our previous episodes about coronavirus. There's a couple of episodes lined up. One that I'm very excited about because it was also videoed with one of. Actually, I'm not going to spoil the surprise. You're just going to have to wait for it. But listen, thank you so much for watching. This was the first episode, and we'll be back in about a week or 2 weeks. We'll be announcing it. We will be streaming on YouTube and Facebook, possibly also Instagram as well, depending on if you guys like this or not. This has been fun. Thank you so much, Lee, for joining in, man, and for even kind of being the catalyst for starting this.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you for everyone's attention if they've been watching all this time.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your evenings, guys. Have a good weekend. And I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Rock on.